Procrastination often stems from deeper issues rather than just a lack of discipline. To effectively stop procrastinating, it's important to first identify the root cause behind it. Many people put off tasks because of fear of failure, fear of imperfection, or even fear of success. The idea of starting something and not doing it well can be paralyzing, leading to avoidance behavior. Perfectionists, for example, tend to procrastinate because they set extremely high standards for themselves. If they don't believe they can meet those standards, they delay starting altogether. Another major reason for procrastination is a lack of motivation or interest in the task at hand. If a task feels dull, tedious, or meaningless, it's easy to push it aside in favor of something more enjoyable. The brain naturally seeks pleasure and avoids discomfort. So, when given the choice between watching a favorite TV show and working on a boring assignment, it's no surprise that people often choose the former. Sometimes, procrastination is a result of poor time management. When tasks pile up, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and unsure of where to start. This sense of being lost in a sea of responsibilities can lead to avoidance. Instead of tackling the work head-on, people may turn to distractions like scrolling through social media, watching YouTube videos, or engaging in unnecessary tasks that give a false sense of productivity. Emotional factors also play a role in procrastination. Stress, anxiety, and even low self-esteem can make it difficult to start tasks. If someone is feeling mentally exhausted or lacks confidence in their abilities, they may delay beginning something because they doubt their capability to complete it successfully. Negative self-talk, such as, "I'll never be able to do this," or "I'm not good enough," can reinforce procrastination and make it an ongoing habit. In some cases, people procrastinate because they overestimate the amount of time they have to complete a task. This leads to the common trap of thinking, "I still have plenty of time. I'll do it later." However, as deadlines approach, the realization sets in that there is far less time than expected, leading to rushed, last-minute work that may not be of the best quality. This creates a cycle where procrastination continues to repeat itself, fueled by the temporary relief of avoiding the task in the moment. Another important aspect to consider is the impact of decision fatigue. When faced with too many choices, it becomes harder to make a decision and take action. This often happens when people don't have a clear plan or structure for completing their tasks. Instead of making progress, they spend time debating what to do first or how to approach the work, which only leads to further delays. Understanding the underlying reason for procrastination is the first step toward overcoming it. Without recognizing what's holding you back, it's difficult to implement effective strategies to change the habit. One of the main reasons people procrastinate is that tasks feel too overwhelming or too big to tackle all at once. When a project seems massive, it's easy to feel paralyzed, unsure of where to start. This often leads to avoidance, as the mind tricks itself into believing that delaying the task will somehow make it easier to handle later. However, the longer it is put off, the more stressful and urgent it becomes. Breaking tasks into smaller steps is a powerful way to overcome this paralysis and make even the most daunting projects feel manageable. When a task is divided into smaller, actionable steps, it no longer appears intimidating. Instead of thinking about completing an entire project, the focus shifts to completing just one small part of it. This reduces the mental burden and makes it easier to get started. For example, if someone needs to write a research paper, they may procrastinate because the idea of writing an entire paper feels exhausting. However, if they break it down into steps, such as choosing a topic, gathering research, creating an outline, writing the introduction, and so on, it suddenly feels much more achievable. Completing each small step provides a sense of progress, which builds momentum and makes it easier to keep going. Another reason breaking tasks into smaller steps is effective is that it helps overcome the brain's resistance to starting. Often the hardest part of any task is simply beginning. Once a person starts, they usually realize it's not as difficult as they imagined. By focusing on just the first step, such as writing one sentence, organizing materials, or setting up a workspace, the mind is tricked into engaging with the task instead of avoiding it. This approach is especially useful for tasks that seem boring or unpleasant because committing to just a small portion feels much less overwhelming than committing to the entire thing at once. Psychologically, completing small steps triggers a release of dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. This creates a positive reinforcement loop that encourages continued effort. Each completed step provides a small sense of accomplishment, which boosts motivation to move on to the next part of the task. Over time, this builds confidence and makes tasks feel easier to manage. Instead of dreading a large workload, the brain starts associating productivity with feelings of satisfaction and achievement. Breaking tasks down also helps improve time management. When people view a project as one large entity, they may underestimate how long it will take or fail to allocate enough time to complete it properly. By dividing it into smaller parts, it becomes easier to set specific deadlines for each step and track progress along the way. This reduces the chances of last-minute cramming or rushing to complete everything at once. Another benefit of this approach is that it allows for flexibility. Life is unpredictable, and sometimes unexpected events disrupt plans. When a task is broken into smaller steps, it's easier to adjust the schedule without feeling completely overwhelmed. If one step gets delayed, the entire project doesn't have to come to a halt. Instead, adjustments can be made without losing momentum, making it easier to stay on track. By focusing on just one small part of a task at a time, the pressure to achieve perfection also decreases. Many people procrastinate because they feel they need to produce perfect results from the very beginning. However, when working on one small piece at a time, it's easier to refine and improve the work gradually instead of expecting immediate perfection. This approach encourages progress over perfection, which is key to overcoming procrastination. One of the biggest obstacles to overcoming procrastination is the difficulty of getting started. The longer a task is delayed, the harder it becomes to begin, and the more overwhelming it seems. This leads to a cycle where people keep putting things off, waiting for the right moment to feel motivated. However, motivation is unreliable, and the longer a task is postponed, the more anxiety and guilt build up around it. A simple but highly effective way to break this cycle is by using the 2-minute rule, which helps eliminate the initial resistance to starting a task. The 2-minute rule is based on the idea that if something takes less than 2 minutes to complete, it should be done immediately rather than being put off. This applies to small tasks like responding to an email, washing a few dishes, or organizing a desk. These tiny tasks may seem insignificant, but when left undone, they accumulate and create a feeling of being overwhelmed. By completing them right away, they are no longer mental burdens, and it prevents the to-do list from growing unnecessarily. Small, quick actions can make a surprising difference in overall productivity and help maintain a sense of control over daily responsibilities. However, the true power of the 2-minute rule goes beyond just completing quick tasks. It can also be used as a strategy to tackle larger, more complex projects by simply committing to working on something for just 2 minutes. The idea is that starting a task, even for a very short amount of time, helps overcome the mental resistance to it. Most of the time, once someone begins working on something, they naturally continue beyond those 2 minutes. For example, if someone is avoiding exercising, committing to just 2 minutes of stretching or a single push-up might seem easy. And once they start, they are more likely to continue for a longer session. The hardest part is beginning, but once in motion, it becomes easier to keep going. This method works because of a psychological principle called the Zeigarnik effect, which states that the brain dislikes unfinished tasks and feels a natural urge to complete them. Once a task is started, even in a small way, the mind wants to see it through, reducing the likelihood of stopping after just 2 minutes. This is why people who sit down to write just a single sentence often end up writing an entire paragraph, or why those who plan to clean for 2 minutes might find themselves tidying up an entire room. The small act of beginning creates momentum, making it easier to continue. Another reason the 2-minute rule is effective is that it removes the pressure of perfectionism. Many procrastinators avoid tasks because they feel they need to do them perfectly or devote a large amount of time to them. This mindset can make even simple tasks feel intimidating. However, when the goal is just to work for 2 minutes, there is no expectation of completing the entire task or doing it perfectly. This removes the fear of failure and reduces the mental barriers that often lead to procrastination. Additionally, this approach helps build habits over time. The more often someone engages in a task, even briefly, the more natural it becomes to continue doing it. Consistency is more important than intensity when it comes to habit formation. For example, if someone wants to develop a reading habit, committing to reading just 1 page per day makes it easier to integrate into their routine. Over time, this small effort builds into a larger habit, making it easier to engage in productive behaviors without needing extra motivation. By implementing the 2-minute rule, the brain starts associating tasks with action rather than avoidance. Instead of viewing work as something overwhelming, it becomes something that can be easily started with minimal effort. This shift in mindset reduces procrastination and makes productivity feel less like a struggle. When the brain learns that starting is easy, tasks no longer seem as intimidating, making it easier to stay consistent and maintain long-term progress. One of the biggest reasons people procrastinate is the absence of clear deadlines. When there is no specific time frame for completing a task, it's easy to keep pushing it off, assuming there will always be more time later. This often leads to a cycle where tasks get delayed indefinitely until they become urgent, forcing last-minute work under pressure. Deadlines provide structure and accountability, making tasks feel more immediate and manageable rather than something that can be endlessly postponed. Without deadlines, the brain perceives tasks as non-urgent, and when something doesn't feel urgent, it often gets pushed aside for activities that provide instant gratification. This is why people frequently choose entertainment, social media, or other distractions over important but long-term tasks. The problem with this approach is that deadlines don't disappear just because they're ignored. Instead, they creep up suddenly, leading to stress, rushed work, and often lower quality results. Setting clear deadlines helps break this habit by creating a sense of responsibility and encouraging steady progress rather than last-minute panic. One of the most effective ways to use deadlines is to break large tasks into smaller, time-bound goals. When a project has only one final deadline, it's easy to underestimate how much work is actually required until the last minute. By setting smaller, individual deadlines for different stages of the task, the work becomes more structured and easier to handle. For example, if someone has a research paper due in a month, instead of leaving all the work for the last few days, they can set deadlines for choosing a topic, gathering research, writing an outline, completing a rough draft, and then editing. This approach not only prevents procrastination but also improves the overall quality of work by allowing time for revisions and refinements. Deadlines also create a sense of urgency that helps boost focus and efficiency. When people know they have a limited amount of time to complete something, they are more likely to stay on task rather than get distracted. This is why many individuals are able to complete a surprising amount of work right before a deadline. It forces them to concentrate. However, waiting until the last moment to feel that urgency leads to unnecessary stress. By setting self-imposed deadlines earlier than the actual due date, the same sense of urgency can be used to drive productivity without the negative effects of rushing. In addition to setting deadlines, making them visible and concrete is important. Writing them down, adding them to a calendar, or using productivity tools to track progress can serve as reminders and reinforce commitment. When deadlines remain vague or only exist in the mind, they are easy to ignore. Having a clear system for tracking deadlines creates external accountability, making it more difficult to procrastinate without noticing. Another effective technique is to create consequences and rewards for meeting deadlines. Just as external deadlines from work or school create pressure because they come with consequences, setting personal consequences can add extra motivation. For example, someone might decide that if they don't finish a task by their self-imposed deadline, they won't allow themselves to watch their favorite TV show that evening. On the other hand, rewarding oneself for completing tasks on time can make deadlines feel more positive and reinforce good habits. Procrastination often thrives in environments where time feels unlimited. However, by implementing clear and structured deadlines, the mind begins to associate tasks with a fixed time frame, reducing the temptation to delay them. Over time, this approach trains the brain to prioritize work more effectively and develop a habit of staying on schedule rather than scrambling at the last minute. Distractions are one of the biggest reasons people procrastinate. Even when someone genuinely wants to get work done, their environment, habits, or technology can make it incredibly difficult to focus. In today's digital world, distractions are everywhere. Social media notifications, text messages, emails, streaming services, and even small household tasks that suddenly seem more appealing than the work at hand. The human brain is naturally wired to seek instant gratification, and distractions provide exactly that. This is why it's so easy to get caught in the habit of checking a phone for just a minute and then losing track of time. Eliminating distractions is essential for overcoming procrastination because it removes the temptation to engage in activities that pull focus away from important tasks. One of the first steps in reducing distractions is identifying what they are. Everyone has different things that divert their attention, so it's important to observe personal habits and recognize patterns of procrastination. Some people may find that their biggest distraction is their phone, while others may get sidetracked by background noise, clutter, or even their own wandering thoughts. Keeping a distraction journal for a few days, writing down each time focus is lost and what caused it, can provide insight into which distractions are the biggest problem. Once these distractions are identified, specific strategies can be used to minimize or remove them. Technology is one of the most common sources of distraction. Social media apps, instant messaging, and email notifications constantly compete for attention, making it hard to stay focused for long periods. A simple but effective way to eliminate these distractions is by turning off notifications while working. Placing a phone on airplane mode, using website blockers, or even physically putting the phone in another room can significantly improve concentration. Many productivity apps are designed to help with this by restricting access to certain websites or apps for a set period, preventing the temptation to check them. Creating a dedicated workspace that is free from distractions also plays a crucial role in staying focused. Working in a cluttered, noisy, or overly comfortable environment can make it difficult to concentrate. Having a clean, organized desk with only the necessary materials for the task at hand can help signal to the brain that it's time to work. If noise is a problem, using noise-canceling headphones or playing instrumental music can help create a more focused atmosphere. Similarly, if working from home, setting clear boundaries with family members or roommates about not being disturbed during work time can be helpful. Another major distraction is the tendency to multitask. Many people believe that doing multiple things at once increases productivity, but in reality, it often leads to lower quality work and more frequent distractions. When switching between tasks, the brain takes time to adjust, which can slow down progress and make it harder to focus. Instead of trying to juggle multiple things at once, focusing on one task at a time using techniques like the Pomodoro technique, working in focused intervals with short breaks, can improve efficiency and reduce the urge to check distractions. Internal distractions such as daydreaming, stress, or lack of motivation can also contribute to procrastination. Sometimes the biggest barrier to getting work done isn't external distractions but the mind itself. Racing thoughts, worries about unrelated problems, or simply not feeling in the mood to work can make it easy to lose focus. Practicing mindfulness techniques such as deep breathing or meditation can help calm the mind and improve concentration. Writing down distracting thoughts on a piece of paper and addressing them later can also prevent them from interrupting work. Another effective way to reduce distractions is to set specific time limits for work and break periods. The brain naturally struggles to maintain focus for long stretches. So scheduling regular short breaks can prevent mental fatigue while keeping distractions under control. During work periods, it's important to fully commit to the task at hand and save distractions for designated break times. For example, instead of randomly checking social media throughout the day, setting a rule to only check it during a 10-minute break can help maintain focus while still allowing time for enjoyment. By consciously eliminating distractions and creating an environment that supports focus, it becomes easier to overcome procrastination. Rather than relying on willpower alone, setting up systems that minimize interruptions makes it more natural to stay on task. Over time, the brain adapts to a less distracted way of working, making productivity a habit rather than a struggle. Procrastination often thrives because there is little immediate gratification in completing difficult or long-term tasks. The human brain is wired to seek rewards, and if a task feels tedious, overwhelming, or lacking in short-term benefits, it's easy to put it off in favor of activities that provide instant pleasure, like watching TV, browsing social media, or playing video games. This is why rewarding yourself for completing tasks is such an effective way to combat procrastination. By creating a system where productivity leads to immediate positive reinforcement, the brain starts associating work with pleasure rather than just stress or obligation. Over time, this builds motivation and makes it easier to stay consistent with tasks. One of the most effective ways to use rewards is to set small, achievable milestones and pair them with specific incentives. When a task feels too large or too far away from completion, it can be demotivating because the reward seems distant. However, by breaking the task into smaller steps and rewarding progress along the way, the brain gets frequent boosts of dopamine, which increases motivation. For example, instead of waiting until an entire project is finished to feel a sense of accomplishment, setting rewards for completing different stages, such as researching a topic, writing an outline, or finishing a rough draft, keeps motivation high throughout the process. The type of reward used matters as well. It needs to be something meaningful enough to feel like a genuine incentive, but not so indulgent that it becomes a distraction. For instance, taking a 10-minute break to listen to music, watching an episode of a favorite show after finishing a report, or enjoying a snack after completing a study session can be effective rewards. The key is to choose something enjoyable that doesn't derail productivity. If the reward is too immersive, like playing a video game that leads to hours of procrastination, it can defeat the purpose. Finding the right balance ensures that rewards serve as motivation rather than becoming new distractions. Another approach to using rewards effectively is the concept of temptation bundling. This involves pairing a necessary but unappealing task with something enjoyable to make it more engaging. For example, only allowing yourself to listen to a favorite podcast while exercising, drinking a special coffee while working on a report, or watching a TV show only while folding laundry. This method makes productivity feel less like a chore and more like an experience that includes enjoyable elements. It reduces resistance to starting tasks and helps create positive associations with productivity. In addition to external rewards, developing an internal sense of accomplishment is just as important. Many people struggle with procrastination because they don't feel an immediate sense of success after completing tasks, especially if they are long-term projects. Taking a moment to acknowledge progress, reflect on what has been achieved, and even celebrate small wins can make a huge difference in building motivation. This could be as simple as checking an item off a to-do list, writing down daily accomplishments, or sharing progress with a friend or mentor. The act of recognizing effort and improvement helps reinforce productive behavior and makes future tasks feel more manageable. Social accountability can also be an effective reward system. Many people are more likely to complete a task when they know someone else is expecting them to do it. Using this to create a reward structure, such as telling a friend, coworker, or family member about a goal and celebrating together once it's achieved, adds an element of social motivation. This could mean treating yourself to a coffee outing with a friend after finishing a difficult assignment, or sharing progress updates in a productivity group. The external encouragement and shared celebration help reinforce positive habits and make staying on track more enjoyable. Another way to use rewards effectively is through gamification. Turning productivity into a game-like challenge can make tasks feel more engaging and rewarding. This can be done by tracking progress visually, setting up a points system, or competing against personal bests. Apps and tools designed for productivity often use this approach, offering virtual badges, streaks, or progress bars that create a sense of achievement. Even something as simple as setting a timer and trying to beat previous work sessions can make completing tasks feel more interactive and rewarding. By consistently pairing productivity with enjoyable rewards, the brain starts associating work with positive experiences rather than just stress or obligation. Over time, this makes it easier to stay motivated and reduces the tendency to procrastinate. Instead of viewing tasks as something to be avoided, they become stepping stones toward enjoyable moments, making it more natural to take action rather than delay. Overcoming procrastination is not about achieving perfection, but about developing habits that make taking action easier and more natural. By breaking tasks into smaller steps, using short bursts of effort to get started, setting clear deadlines, eliminating distractions, and rewarding progress, it becomes possible to rewire the brain to prioritize productivity over avoidance. The key is consistency. Small changes in daily routines can lead to significant improvements over time. Rather than waiting for motivation to strike, creating an environment that encourages action will help build momentum. The more frequently tasks are tackled head-on, the less daunting they feel, and soon productivity becomes a habit rather than a struggle.